Coming up on Almost Adults. I want to go a little zany, dare I say a little anime.
Well, be a JoJo because, JoJos don't care. They're just super loud and fashionable with everything. David Bowie just resonated so much with me. Obviously I like his music. I think he's incredibly attractive. Just throwing that out there. Then you're not acting because you love performing. You're acting because you want to be famous, and that's just a bad road to go down.
My friend Gage is gonna talk to you. Oh, and Dan, he'll be there, too. Well, they're gonna talk about the things they wanna say. Speak about their lives from day to day. They're gonna dive into the nuts and bolts. Welcome y'all to Always Adults.
It's actually Almost Adults. And hello, everybody. Hello, and hi. Welcome to the program known as Almost Adults. This is our annual episode that we do every 12 years. And I'm here with Dan Kaka.
Hello.
How's it going, buddy?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing spectacular.
Yay.
And Kira Buckland is also here. Thank you for joining us, Kira.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How have you been doing this fine weekend of January?
Pretty good. I went to Anime Impulse yesterday, and it was, super crazy, so I'm glad to just have a day off today to chill.
Right on. What do you do typically to chill out?
I play Pokemon Go. That's the biggest thing, and today was Community Day, but I only got 2 shinies, which was kind of sad, because usually I like to get at least 3, so I can have one of each evolution, but that didn't happen today, but at least I got the 2.
Oh, as an avid Pokemon Go player, I also played Community Day myself, and I got some spiels, so if you want to trade something for something.
Sure, but I think you have to trade in person, unfortunately.
Oh, gross. Nowadays, in 2022, being in person? No, thank you. So how has Pokemon Go impacted you during the pandemic? Has it had an effect on your life? Because I know for me, personally, it's been letting me go out and gives me a goal of 6 kilometers to walk every day.
Nice. Yeah, I've been playing since it came out, so for me, it's kind of just been the same of, it encourages me to go out and do stuff and have goals. I guess I'm kind of a goal-oriented person, so it's nice to be able to have, hey, I want to catch this shiny or this many of this type, or I need to do this raid. The raid hour every Wednesday night is a great way to get out and do something.
That's fantastic. I haven't gotten any shinies from that raid in quite some time. I need to hop back on the raid hour. I'm sorry, Dan, were you going to say something?
No. I might be out of this conversation or out of the loop because I only joined Pokemon Go during the craze, and once it started dying down, I also left the craze as well.
Well, you're also an intense runner, right, Dan?
Yes. Very much so.
I think it's been a year since we did our last recording, or just about a couple months. Mm-hmm. You want to tell the audience about your beefcake arc?
I guess so. There's...
You don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so weird. It basically just came down to I wanted to get better at rock climbing, so I joined a rock climbing gym, and now I just go as much as possible, and we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, and Dan could crush a melon with his biceps if he so desires. That's what's been going on with Dan, as far as from what I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
We're still in a pandemic, I'm pretty sure.
I hope so.
Unfortunately.
No, I don't hope so, Dan.
Yeah, well, I get to work from home. I get the comfort of working from home.
Yeah, I work from home as well. What about you, Kira? Do you mainly go into studios nowadays, or do you just mainly have your own setup?
It's a mix of both. Things went very heavily remote when everything first started, but I know, especially now, a lot of studios have been trying to get people back in because they want the consistency of, all the actors in the project being on the same setup, because even if each actor has a good individual setup, it's, just everyone being in kind of their own space and having maybe different equipment that they use and stuff. It's a lot of extra time and money on the mix end, so I'd say it's about half and half for me right now.
Right on.
When was the last time you've been in a studio?
Last Tuesday.
Less than a week ago.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to be in the studio or do you prefer like recording at home?
I think there's pros and cons to each thing. One of the nice things about being in studio is you just don't have to worry about the technical stuff on your end, really. Because when you're recording at home, the biggest thing is you have to be mindful of your gain. So obviously, if you're doing a lot of screaming, yelling, battle efforts, that kind of stuff, you have to make sure that you are setting your gain lower because otherwise, if it peaks, it's not usable. But then on the flip side, if you're doing like the really quiet, whispery stuff, you have to make sure you have enough level or else you'll have to redo it. So it's kind of like you have to constantly kind of keep an eye on where your gain is sitting, and a lot of times you have to do like recording stuff on your end too as a backup, which is just kind of like a lot. And it's just like there's so much to think, you know, if there's like noise outside, like if there's construction or dogs or planes or whatever, it's like there's so many variables for things to go wrong and impact the session. Whereas when you're in a studio, it's like all that stuff is taken care of for you, so you can just focus on acting. But it is nice not to have to like get ready and drive, you know, that's the biggest thing. I live close to where a lot of the work is, so thankfully most studios that I have to go into are, you know, 5-10 minute drive away, which is really convenient. But occasionally we'll have something that's like a 1 or 2 hour drive, and you know, that's a lot to do, especially if you just have, say, like 20 lines that you have to record as DLC or something for a game. So, you know, I don't like commuting too far if I don't have to.
And the distraction things around, I get that. Like, for some reason, every Wednesday here at my place, there's always a leaf blower outside. I noticed that you have cats as well. Do they ever like interfere with you?
Once in a while, you know, if they scratch at the side of the booth or something, then it can become audible. But yeah, like the leaf blower for us is every Thursday. And then, you know, that's a big thing because it's so noisy that even with the booth that I have, you know, you can still kind of hear it in the background. So it means that we have to stop and we can't really record until they finish that round of it.
Yeah. We have a friend of ours, Michael Hunter. He is on the podcast, Come on Fuhuko Pods. He has a deaf cat, and his cat doesn't know that how loud she can be. And the only way that she knows that she's meowing is by going as loud as possible so that she can hear the vibration or feel the vibrations. So every once in a while, if you're listening to his podcast, you'll just hear like off in the distance, this screaming
that's so cute.
cat.
One of our ferals that we feed was such a screamer that you could even hear him from in the booth sometimes when he was outside.
Oh, jeez.
It became so frequent for him that we ended up just including the cat and just like saying, you know, that's just the pod cat. Just
The
Yeah.
chime in
podcast.
with her opinions.
I always say embrace the cat.
Oh, God, I would love an animal. I just came back from Florida, and my family has 3 cats and 2 dogs. I fall in love with them each night because our fat, fluffy cat, Gloria, likes to sleep on my face. And it's very nice. I live by myself in the studio, so it's nice for someone, not someone, some cat, to have a little interaction with once in a while. Yeah. What are your cats' names?
So we have Mina, who's the little panther. We have Jareth, who's the pumpkin spice cat. Siler, who's basically a Snorlax. Cupcake, who's a fluffy tabby who's afraid of humans. And then Cowbell, who's technically a feral, but he spends more time indoors than outdoors now, and he's like the sweetest baby angel.
Holy cow, you got a zoo going on.
Yeah,
Is Jareth named after Bowie from Labyrinth?
sure is.
Ah,
Huge Bowie fans, so, you know.
yeah, I could tell.
I mean, considering your name is Lady Stardust,
Yeah.
I kind of assume from there on.
Do you sing Bowie at karaoke? If you do karaoke?
Mm-hmm.
What's your go-to?
Oh, there's so many that are good. Like, I really like doing Rebel Rebel. Fame can be really fun. Ziggy Stardust, the song. Changes is, of course, always fun. Life on Mars. Like, there's just so many.
Oh, yeah. I actually sang Life on Mars last night. I was doing some karaoke at a friend's party. We did a little Life on Mars, a little Tears for Fears. Good time. Ooh, now you got me in a karaoke mood. I feel like I should rent a room pretty darn soon.
I know, I wish that was like a thing here, but I don't really know any places that are still open anymore, like since the pandemic.
I'm in LA. We're both in LA, and there's this place downtown that you can rent out a room for however many people. I can give you the name after this.
Sure, yeah, I think there might still be some in K-Town if it's near there.
This is closer to Little Tokyo, which I suppose is adjacent to K-Town. Speaking of karaoke, are there any extracurricular extracurricular activities that you've picked up on during the past few years? Something happened in this past few years. I'm not sure if we can say it.
I roller skate. Like, that's a big thing, but I kind of combine that with my Pokemon Go habits. So, like, I will skate and then do, like, raids and catch Pokemon at the same time.
Does your rollerblading go, or I'm sorry, is it roller skating or rollerblading?
Skating.
Skating. Does your skating keep up with the pace of your Pokemon Go thing? Because, yeah, sometimes if I run really fast, it doesn't keep up.
Yeah, it's thankfully okay for that. Where I mainly have issues is like if I'm riding in a friend's car or something like that and we're going on like a Pokemon drive or whatever, then it'll be like, oh, you're in a car, so, you know, even if you're not driving, we're still not going to show you any Pokemon.
Yeah, it says you're too fast. Are you the passenger? Great. Not going to show you any Pokemon, though.
I know, so like why even ask if if it's not going to work, right?
Why don't you just stop working Pokemon Go? Come on.
That does remind me, we did have a former coworker of ours. We were tour guides over at Warner Brothers, and one of the tour guides, he made sure to keep Pokemon Go open the entire time while he was doing tours. But he made sure that he would go slow enough on those carts, because we have to drive the carts through the backlot. He made sure to go slow enough so that it didn't detect that he was actually driving the whole time.
That's amazing.
And then he would try to figure out routes to like go all the way across the backlots. Like on purpose, he would just like go to one corner and then be like, all right, we're going to check out the soundstage that's all the way on the other end of this. And that's how he caught so many.
Wow.
You gotta respect the grind, my dude.
Yeah.
That Pokemon Go grind. I also wanted to ask if there are any kind of creative fields that you would like to dip your toe into, whether it be like anything musical or anything drawing-wise or something like that.
My problem is that I'm just like not good at a lot of things, unfortunately. I like cosplay. I haven't really done like a ton of it in a while because I'm not really confident in my body anymore, long story short. But I do like makeup and stuff, which is kind of an extension of that. So I think in terms of like creative stuff outside of acting, probably makeup would be the closest thing I can think of.
Oh, right on. Is there any like makeup tutorials that you watch?
Yeah, I mean, I just watch like a ton on YouTube and stuff.
Is it possible you can shout out any person, or do you not want to?
It'll depend whoever's in my feed. Like sometimes I'll watch one video because in the thumbnail I like the look of it, and then it'll be like, oh, you might also like this one, and then I see that in my recommended, so.
Gotcha. You're a Renaissance lady with the makeup. You taste all different kinds of makeup tastes, makeup visages.
I mean, usually
Makeup
like
massages.
the more extra, the better is kind of how I think of it.
Yeah, I want to dress up fashion-wise. I want to be a little more extroverted this year because usually I just go in like a t-shirt and jeans because I don't really care how I look most of the time, but I want to go a little zany, dare I say a little anime.
Well, be a JoJo because, I mean, JoJos don't care. You know, they're just super loud and fashionable with everything.
I've seen those kind of folks on the street, and I envy them. Dan, do you have any fashion goals for 2022?
I didn't think I needed fashion
Come
goals
on,
for
before the
2022.
podcast, I said, Dan, you gotta get your fashion goals together.
Maybe get new jeans. I've been trying to think ahead to Halloween, because usually I usually try to go all in for Halloween. Like last Halloween, I was Shang-Chi and like actually went all out with the costume, and I was really worried because I ordered it in the beginning of September and it didn't arrive to me until like the day before Halloween.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had something similar with my Ted Lasso costume, where I ordered the jacket off this shady website, and they're like, it's going to be in time for November 3rd. And I said, that's not Halloween. And they're like, okay, well, I guess you can have it before Halloween. And I said, thank you. And I got it. You do anything fun for Halloween, Kira?
No, I think I worked that day and then that was it. Like, I just didn't do anything special.
No worries. I went to a party at a friend's. I love Halloween. I try to take the celebration in full swing.
I mean, I do too, but it just felt like there was just so little to do, you know, the past 2 years for Halloween that I don't know.
That's true, yeah. And also you have to do it kind of safely.
Yeah, but this was like the first year I didn't even dress up, which is crazy because I usually will be David Bowie for Halloween. That was kind of like one of the things I do every year. Or like I was like Asuka, I think a couple years ago with my roommate. And now like what am I going to do? It's like nobody's going to see it.
The people on the gram will see it. Do it for the gram.
Yeah, but then it's like there's no point in, spending an hour doing my makeup, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just to pose for one picture or an Instagram reel if you're hip with that. Dan, have you gotten into TikTok recently?
I try to avoid it as much as possible. I feel like I'm too old for TikTok. Does that seem weird?
No,
No.
I feel the exact same way. I was literally like talking to some other actors and I'm like, I know everybody's doing this and stuff, but I just feel too old. I feel like it's a Gen Z thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I don't think I could view TikToks all day, but I do like making like short little fun videos. When I said Instagram Reels, I thought, might as well be TikTok,
I can't think of anything to post. Like I made an account just to like have one in case I ever wanted to try to grow my brand on there. But I'm like, what am I going to put? I could post videos of my cats, I guess. But I feel like any cat parents know this. You're like, oh, my cat's doing something cute. I got to like take a video of it. And then they stop doing the cute thing.
Yeah, no, I was trying to take a bunch of pictures of my cats when I was in Florida, and they would not behave. My cat Lucky was like 18 years old, and she was just like poking her head out of a little box, and I'm like, oh, well, I gotta photograph this moment. And she jumped out at the last minute, and I'm like, all right, you're going back in the box, so I'm taking a picture. You're too cute not to do that.
So cute.
I heard of this one professional or I guess it was a pet photographer. She was on NPR and they asked her, like, what is the secret to making a great cat picture? And she said that she will take a toy lizard and tape it to her forehead. And that way a cat will always direct its attention towards the lens.
I love it.
Ah, tips from the pros. So, Kira, back on track. You're one of the founding members of Voice Acting Club, and we wanted to know how that originated and how that shaped you as a person and your career.
Yeah. The original, like very original version of the Voice Acting Club started back in 2005, which is wild to think. And it started on a site called Newgrounds. And it was basically a way at the time for Flash animators and voice talent to connect. And I feel like the landscape of hobby voice work, online voice work and stuff was very different back then because now content is monetized, like wherever you go, on YouTube, on Patreon, like all this kind of stuff. So things are a little bit different now in the sense that there's this like idea of, okay, well, are you making money off of this? Because if so, you obviously need to pay your contributors and all this kind of stuff. But back then, it was just because it was like an earlier phase of the internet, I guess you could say. People were just doing stuff because they wanted to create, because they just wanted to have fun. Of course, there's obviously nothing wrong now with wanting to turn that into like an endeavor where you can make money. But it was just kind of like a different landscape back then where people just collaborated on stuff for fun. Back then, it wasn't like nobody was really hiring actors or anything to collaborate on this kind of stuff. People just were like, they did the voices themselves, or they got their friend or family member to do it, or they use like text-to-speech voices. So, if you were like someone who was interested in pursuing voice acting and you were on this site, the few of us who did that kind of had like a monopoly on a lot of the projects at the time, because we were like, hey, like we actively would market ourselves to animators on there. And a lot of times you had like these newer animators coming up being like, hey, I'm trying to make like a Flash animation. I need someone to do the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. That was like the big thing back then. It was like so many Sonic projects, right? So it was a lot of like fan projects and things like that. So they had like a section called like clubs, which is how the name started. And we're like, oh, it'll be like the voice acting club or whatever. But then obviously it was like part of their site and we didn't have any mod powers and stuff. We're like, hey, it would probably be good if we branch out into having our own site so we have a little more control over, we can make categories, we can set our own rules, we can moderate, that sort of thing. And so we moved to pro boards because back then, this was like 2006. when the forum happened. Forums were like a big thing on the internet. See, now it's like social media, but that wasn't really a thing back then. So it was kind of like people would go on forums. The forum was like pretty popular back in its time. Then it just kind of fell off because there were other sites that did the same thing, that offered the same thing. So we just didn't really have the time or energy or interest in maintaining it. But then at the end of 2016, I talked to some of the old admins who were involved with the old site and were like, hey, what if we like do this again? Like, what if we try to, because there was just like an increasing need for it. There were a lot of people being like, hey, where do I find hobby work? Where do I, a lot of it was scattered on like Twitter, Tumblr, that kind of stuff, but there wasn't really like a central place for people to go to either discuss and ask questions or audition for these projects or post auditions for these projects. So we're like, hey, let's try bringing it back and, make it a little bit better, have some guides and articles. So we did that and, it did pretty well, but it just became evident over like the first year of bringing it back that the way that people like to communicate has changed. Forums still exist, but they're just seen as a little bit more outdated. It's just not how, like, especially the younger generation prefers to communicate. They like real-time chat, they like social media. So we're kind of like, how can we adapt? We liked the idea of like, oh, you have like these forums, but it just wasn't how people prefer to communicate. So we put this, there's this extension you could add where you could have a chat box at the bottom of the forum. And people really liked the chat box because it felt connected to other humans. They could kind of ask things in real time. And then Discord started becoming a big thing and gaining in popularity. So in like 2018, like beginning 2018, we're like, people kept asking us, why don't you guys have a Discord server? And at the time, like I want to say like I was kind of resistant because I was just like, no, like that's all like new. It's like we're talking about TikTok now. It's kind of like, that's like for the kid,
Yeah.
But it just kind of became evident that, okay, this is something that people want. We'll do it as a supplement to the forum. And the Discord just blew up and overtook everything else. So now even if like people do, because the forum still technically exists, if people do come there, we're like, go to the Discord. You can get people answering your questions in real time.
That's awesome. If people are interested in joining that Discord, where exactly would they go?
It's discord.gg/voiceactingclub. That's the direct link to the server. You can also visit our website at voiceactingclub.com. We have some links to articles and stuff like that because our articles are still hosted on the forum.
When you say articles, what exactly do you mean by that?
So I write a lot of guides and stuff. I guess, that's sort of something creative-ish that I do in like, my spare time or whatever, is I write articles on different topics for people who are interested in doing voice acting. Because, for example, I have a lot of people who reach out to me on email, social media, Discord, whatever, where they're like, hey, or even like at cons, this happens a lot, where people are like, hey, I'm trying to get into this. Like, what do I do? What did you do? And stuff like that. And, it's like you tell them the same thing, like, take classes on acting, do stuff on the internet for fun first. It's such a complicated topic that we don't have a lot of sites that, no, there are actually a really few sites that do go into depth on it. Like there's iwannabeavoiceactor.com, which is a really popular one written by an industry veteran. So that's another resource that, of course, I recommend to people who are looking to do this. But, people say like, well, how do I make a demo reel just to submit to online projects, things like that. And none of us have the time to like write an essay for like every person who reaches out to us. So it just makes sense to have these articles being like, hey, here's common topics and questions that get asked for people trying to get at least involved in the online space portion of this. Here's things to do. Here's things to think about. We also have articles on the business side of it. So maybe somebody is like just starting to get into paid work and they're like, hey, how do I keep track of my income for taxes? How do I budget my jobs? What are things to look out for in contracts, for example? Because occasionally you'll have clients who have really predatory terms in their contracts. And so it helps to have an article letting people know, for example, hey, you should never have a non-compete in a freelance voiceover agreement. That literally makes no sense. And it means they're using a boilerplate template for employees and you are a contractor that is very different. Demand that they remove it if you ever see this type of thing.
Have you ever dealt with any of these contracts before? Or have you ever made that mistake of signing one accidentally?
Thankfully, I'm pretty adamant about always reading my contracts before I sign them, whether it's for a convention, for a job, any of that kind of stuff. A lot of times, if you work with a particular studio a lot, their contracts will basically be the same for all their projects. So you're like, okay, I've already looked over this studio's standard contract. I know what it is. Or if a project is union, like SAG-AFTRA, they have a standard contract that they use and stuff like that. But especially for working with independent clients online, I think that's where you have to be really careful. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that the company is trying to do anything bad, but a lot of times maybe if they don't have the budget to hire a lawyer to help them with contracts, they'll just kind of go online and be like, hey, what's a template I can use? And it's stuff that like often relates more to employees and things like that. And you just have to be careful because you don't want a situation that's gonna turn out bad for you in the future because you signed something without realizing what you're agreeing to. Like, to give the example for like a convention, you know, you have to be really careful in convention contracts if they say something like, oh, if the guest is not able to come, then they will pay the convention for the cost of their airfare. And it's like, no, because if you have like a health emergency or something, especially in the time of COVID, you can't like be paying hundreds of dollars for like your flight or whatever because you're sick and you can't go. Like, you know, that like makes no sense. So it's like, no, you should be able to cancel without penalty if it's for a legitimate health reason.
Yeah.
For sure. Just to reiterate, especially nowadays with, I don't know when you're listening to this, but we're in the middle of a bit of a surge in COVID. So
yeah, and I had it towards the end of December, and I had to cancel a con, you know, because of course, like, you know, if you get COVID, you can't go. So
yeah,
like,
no, that's wise for everybody.
yeah, so that, you know, that's the thing. You just don't want to like have to be paying money, or like, you know, one time I saw a contract where it was like, oh, if you turn in your voice files and we decide that like you made a mistake, then we're going to reduce your pay. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. You can request revisions, you can do that, but you're not going to like take the actors, like cut their paycheck because you need a revision. That's never acceptable. So it's just kind of, you know, you have to watch out for weird little things that you might not be aware of.
Just out of curiosity, are there contracts where they're like, we can't ask for retakes? That's a stupid question. Shut up, Gage. Shut up, Dan.
Yeah, so how retakes are handled for voiceover depends on basically how you're doing the sessions. For example, if you're working on anime, a major video game, anything with like kind of a bigger company or client, they'll want to do live sessions. Sometimes it's you physically go to the studio. Sometimes in the modern times, that means you record from your home studio, but you are doing a live session. And part of the goal with the live session is that they can get anything that they want from you in that time that they have you booked for. So let's say like you're recording a video game or something. You'll have the voice director in the call, and you'll often have some of the clients or maybe some of the writers or script adapters on the line too, who are there to kind of give context and say, is this our vision for what the character sounds like in English and how they act and stuff, you know, to kind of make sure you're on the right track. So when you have a session like that, basically they're supposed to get everything that they need from you, all the revisions, alternate takes, possible different lines, because sometimes they're like, hey, we're not sure how this character's name is going to be pronounced, so we're going to record 2 different ways so we have an alt in case, you know, it's different, or, you know, just things like that. Or we don't know what term we're going to use 100%, so we're going to record both. If they think of something then after your session is done and they're like, hey, we actually want some more options, or, oh, we realized we want to change this line, or we need to get a pickup, then they have to pay you for another session because basically they had a chance to get everything with you. They didn't, so they have to bring you back. But say you're recording for an indie project or just like independent clients in general, like sometimes like foreign mobile game clients and stuff, and you're just recording the lines in your own time and sending them, usually you'll have at least 1 or 2 where even if you give them a couple options for each, they're like, hey, we just kind of want this a little different. We want this word emphasized. We want it like a little more energy or whatever. And usually you kind of at least include like a small round of those revisions, because it's kind of one of those things where you're not doing a live session, so you understand that, you know, the client may come back and ask for a couple of additional things. If it gets like excessive though, that's usually where maybe you want like in your contract, or you want to say like, okay, after a certain point, we're going to charge you if you keep wanting to make changes.
I'm glad I asked that. That was a good question. Good question, Dan. You did great stuff.
Yay.
Like actors get confused, especially newer actors, because they hear, for example, oh, you get another session fee every time you do retakes for a job. But if somebody's having you record and send some options for them online, it's just not practical. You know, you have to understand that there may be a couple retakes.
Sure, that makes sense. Also, we wanted to ask, do you happen to have any inspirations outside of voice actors that influence your craft?
Yeah, so, I mean, the biggest one, which is no surprise to anyone, and rest in peace, is David Bowie. He is just kind of like my biggest creative inspiration. It's hard to articulate exactly why like David Bowie just resonated so much with me. You know, obviously I like his music. I think he's incredibly attractive, you know, just throwing that out there. But I think a big part of it too was that he just wasn't afraid to be himself. He wasn't afraid to, you know, be unique and different and just kind of like do his own thing. And he was considered kind of like a style icon and a music icon for the fact that he just did whatever he wanted. And I think that's so cool. Like, I was somebody who was always made fun of for being weird or whatever growing up. And, you know, eventually I was just like embraced it. Like, it's just like, yeah, I am weird. So what? It's better than being like everyone else,
normal.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like so ahead of his time in a lot of ways. And one thing that I think is cool too is because despite the fact that they only play like 5 songs on the radio, the man had 5 decades of music. He has encompassed so many different styles. And I remember hearing about how when Ziggy Stardust and like that whole persona and sound was such a success, his management really wanted him to stick with the whole like glam rock stuff. And they're like, yeah, this is like your thing. It's so successful. Why? And he's like, no, I want to make a jazz record. And they're like, well, why? You have this like image that's successful. You should stick with it. And he didn't want that to get stale. He wanted to keep evolving as an artist. And I think that's partly why his career had so much longevity, because he just kept changing his sound, his image. He was like a chameleon.
Yeah, I always admire artists that go out of their comfort zone and try something new. Like, I don't know why, but the first thing that popped in my mind is Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah. He typically plays basketball, but he also acts in Grown Ups, and he advertises for Papa John's and The General.
He has a doctorate's degree in education.
That's so cool.
Does he really?
He does. So he goes by Dr. Shaq now.
I love it. Yeah, I think one of the things too is you just never want to stagnate as an artist. And I think that's true in like my field as well. Because, you know, I see people, for example, who it's kind of like they end up getting settled into playing like one certain type of character, or they become so known for one character that they just kind of like coast on that and don't really like, you know, expand and keep saying, well, yeah, I played this really iconic character, but I want to keep booking other stuff too. And we have to keep up with the current trends because the market is so saturated with other talented people doing this. You know, I feel very fortunate to have played characters of all different personality types, all different archetypes. You know, whenever people are like, what's your typecast? I'm like, I don't really have one. I have certain types of characters that I gravitate towards and I feel like I can play better than others, but I played everything.
Is there a character that whenever you go to conventions, people talk to you? Is there like a character that comes up most frequently?
Yes. Well, I mean, now it's Jolyne, so I feel, you know, pretty lucky about that, but that's relatively recent. And before that, it was by far 2B from Nier Automata. That was like the role that I would say kind of like changed my career. It's funny because people talk about stuff like, oh, what role was like your big break or this or that, but I'm not a huge fan of that term. The reason being because it makes it sound like somebody was just discovered overnight or they just came out of nowhere. And it's like, but even before I booked Nier, I was working in the industry for years. I played other iconic characters. Like I was in Danganronpa, I was in Love Live, Ace Attorney, like, you know, all this different stuff. But sometimes you'll play that really iconic character, and that's when things start changing in terms of like, I went from having nobody at my table and just sitting there playing video games to pass the time to, you know, actually having lines that needed managing. And it's just that difference of like, you booked that one iconic character, but the journey itself can take so long, and sometimes booking like a big character, there's a lot of luck involved in it because it's kind of like you have to put in the work. You have to do all your groundwork, but I know some actors who I think are incredibly, incredibly talented who just didn't really book those big characters that get them cons and signings and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe some actors who like are newer in their career, but they got really lucky, booked a super popular character on a big franchise, and they do cons all the time. So it's not really a measure of like how good you are as an actor. It's just you can't tell whether or not something is going to be popular when you work on it. So the best thing you can do, just do your best in your auditions, do your best in your work. If something gets big or not, that's out of your hands, but obviously you can't focus too much on that because then you're not acting because you love performing, you're acting because you want to be famous, and that's just a bad road to go down.
Yeah, that's a catch-22. So when's your jazz album dropping now that you've established your character?
Oh man, I wish I was good at music.
Oh, yeah. No, I played a little bit of bass in high school, and now I can't hold a tune.
You got this.
Yeah, I'm not too good at, I do it for fun. I wanted to be in a band for years. That was originally kind of like what I wanted my career path to be before going into voice acting and kind of finding that. But it just, it's one of those things where it's like you can want something so bad, but if you're just not good at it and you work so hard and you're still not good at it, it just kind of, it is what it is. But I'm glad I was able to find something adjacent that I could still do with my desire to perform vocally, just in a different capacity.
Do you still do music on the side?
I sing Bowie songs in my car for fun. I mean, I'd love to be in like a Bowie cover band, but I just don't know people and I don't have the time and it's but there's people who do that. Like I used to go see this Bowie tribute band a lot, and the lead singer, he makes a living. He has a full career off being a David Bowie impersonator, and I think that's incredible. So there was a time where, acting work was really slow for me, and I'm like, can I just be a David Bowie impersonator?
Can I just be David Bowie?
I mean, pretty much.
So Gage and I, we were having this discussion. We didn't really fully flesh it out, but we had this discussion about when it comes to animated movies, there seems to be this push for famous actors to be the voices behind them instead of studios actually casting voice actors to be in there. And I just kind of wanted to get your opinion and how you feel about big animated movies that try to draw people in just by saying oh, we have Bono to voice the main character, even though he's not known for being a voice actor.
Sure. Honestly, I feel like that was always kind of the way that it was for a very long time. I know with the Chris Pratt thing, people started talking about it more and stuff, but it was sort of that stuff was always out of reach for just most voice actors like me and other people I know. Even in the terms of I know everyone's oh, I want to be the lead on a Cartoon Network show and stuff, but even if they're not getting celebrities, I feel like a lot of times the showrunners and their friends end up doing the voices, or if they do hire voice actors, it's people they already know and they're friends with. So many times we don't even see auditions for those big shows or big parts. And I understand it from a marketing standpoint. Of course it's kind of yeah, I'd love to, be in some big Disney film or something like that. But if they hire a celebrity, even if you can say well, a lot of the majority of people don't really care, it's well, there's the people who are vocal on the internet about not caring are different than, the families and their kids and stuff who are oh yeah, this is our, we loved this this comedian or whatever, so we're gonna go see him voicing the character, and the kids can watch it because it's animated or whatever. It's I actually brought up a really interesting point in the server a while back, and because, people were talking about, oh, it's celebrities taking our jobs and stuff, and I said, I'm not threatened by celebrities, because one of the things about celebrities is they are very, very expensive to hire. If a company wants to have a celebrity, they have to budget a lot of money for that celebrity. If anything, that kind of normalizes having bigger budgets for animated productions, because usually stuff that wasn't live action was just always seen as an afterthought. Anime is the most notorious example. Anime budgets, especially for the dubs, are just so low. I guess it's not really a secret that the work does not pay well compared to other stuff in the industry. So you can make a living doing anime, but you have to be working constantly. Most of the people who do anime, they do other things too, like video games that pay a little better, and you kind of just work as much as you can in the opportunities that you're given. But, so when people are oh, what if celebrities do anime? I'm they're not, because the budgets are not there. And if an anime company were to pay for a celebrity, that would be the exception and not the norm, or the celebrity would do it for dirt cheap because they just love anime. And in that case, it's cool, you love anime. Yeah, welcome to the club. Sure, you can be in, whatever. But I think a bigger threat, because if anything, celebrities wanting to be in this stuff would drive the budgets up, which is good for everyone. It benefits everybody if they can get paid better for their work, What I think is a bigger problem is just a lot of the super cheap freelance sites online that say hey, you don't need to pay people properly. We can get actors, artists, graphic designers, whatever, for dirt cheap. And that, I think, is more of a threat to the industry, because even though we'll never, know the names of these actors, basically when people say, we can do what all these actors do, but for a tenth of the price, that's scary, And I don't fault actors for going on, I'll just say it, sites like Fiverr is the biggest offender. I don't fault actors for going on these sites, because if it's a choice of like, hey, I need to pay my bills, I need to feed my family or whatever, it's like I can't fault them for saying you got to do what you got to do, because not everyone has the opportunity to have an agency, be on studio rosters. It's so hard. It's such a competitive industry. But I think stuff like that is more of a threat to us than any celebrities, because driving the rates up is a good thing, driving the rates down is a bad thing. And now that especially so much stuff is recording remotely, if people say, well, I can just go on the internet and get stuff way cheaper than like these industry standard rates that we've agreed to, then it's that hurts everybody's ability to make a living. So that's like my big speech of why I think like the focus is in the wrong place to like be so worried about celebrities.
And I figure if they're going to get any celebrity to do anything related to anime, they're just going to do a live action version of it, because, I mean, if you got them, you got their face, and you're going to pay them a lot, you might as well just turn it live action, like what they did with Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, and most of the time, because even if the celebrity is able to like change their voice and do like a voice acting performance, because a lot of celebrities do both, most of the time I feel like they don't want them to change their voices because they want it to be recognizable as a celebrity. So they're basically like, you're playing this character technically, but you're really just playing yourself with an animated character over it.
Yeah, and I've noticed while watching movies where they do have big name actors voicing, like, I get out of the movie, like I can't focus on the movie because I'm like, I've heard this voice before and I'm trying to figure it out, and I realize it's Jason Mantzoukas because his voice is very distinguished while I'm trying to watch, well, whatever it is. But like, I don't know, it seems to take me out of the movie rather than a voice actor who's able to actually create that character, and that way I can really focus on the story itself.
Sure.
The illusion of a character and the illusion of a story. Sorry, I didn't mean to get very mysterious on you, Dan. It's still me, Gage.
Oh, when do you come back?
I know. It's called acting. I can't believe we've gone this far and we haven't talked about Jolyne and JoJo yet.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way, on getting Jolyne in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Solution. You've had like a long journey in order to get to that role, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that. When did this all start for you?
So I was first introduced to JoJo in 2013, I believe, when some friends had me watch it, starting with part 1, and not a lot of it was animated at the time, so then I started reading the manga after, and, the more I got into it, the more I kind of just got hooked and fell in love with it. And, when I finally got to part 6 and read that, it was so long before I knew part 6 would be animated, but I was just like, I really want to play this character. Like I dressed up as her, like I did all these like things, like just like my general like aesthetic and stuff was like so heavily based on Jolyne, and I was like, I just want to like play this character someday, and like I didn't really like feel bad about being open about it at the time because it would be so many years before that part was animated. Like, when it was announced that part 6 was going to be animated, I tried to, like, not really talk about it as openly because I didn't want to, like, if another actor would have ended up being better for the part, I didn't want to, like, make it seem like I was trying to get an unfair advantage, I guess, is the best way to say it. So, when I knew it was like, okay, this is such a long way off, then I felt more comfortable just, like, talking openly about, yeah, I hope I play her someday if she ever gets an English voice, because it was just like, seemed so far in the distance. And then when it was announced that part 6 was going to be animated, I just, I flipped out because I watched the live event in Japan when they first said it was happening. And I sort of had been trying, even before that, I had been trying to prepare for what I would need to do if I wanted to get a shot at Jolyne someday. I started practicing like the ora ora ora, stuff like that, because of course you have to be able to do that. I needed to practice playing kind of like the strong characters who, she's Jotaro's daughter, obviously, so I feel like there's a lot in her attitude and even in her voice, like that I tried to convey that, that she's Jotaro's daughter and stuff, and she has all these different facets of her personality. So even though she's a very strong character, she's not just like, yeah, I'm gonna beat you up 100% of the time. She has moments where she's very human, which I like and stuff. So, the short answer, I guess, like the shortcut to all of that is you have to be a good actor. Even if I could say like, oh, my biggest goal was to voice Jolyne, kind of the biggest goal in a sense had to be, I want to be a really good actor so that I will have a shot at playing these characters that I really want to play. Because at the end of the day, it's like, sure, maybe if the casting director knows like, this is a really important audition to you or this or that, like, maybe they'll try to like push for you a little extra. We have no way of knowing, but it's like, you're not going to get cast just because you're passionate about a project or character. What's going to get you cast is, are you a good actor? Are you efficient? Can you play this character believably? Are you the best choice for this character? Against all these other actors who are auditioning at similar experience and skill levels as you. So I think kind of like, yes, I wanted to play Jolyne in the broader picture, but where I knew like my work was cut out for me is like, okay, I have to just focus on being a really good performer so that I can get that opportunity when it comes someday. And of course that helped me with my other work too. So I was booking a lot of other shows and other leads on shows. And, I think that kind of helped because so much of like ADR dubbing is like learning on the job. Really good dubbers can work very efficiently in terms of matching sync as well as performance, but it's a lot of multitasking. I always say like, it's funny that dubbing pays the lowest of everything in the business because it's the most technical skill that requires the most multitasking. Mm-hmm. And, the more dubbing that you work on over the years, generally the faster you'll get, the better you'll get with sync, that kind of stuff. Because, yes, performance is most important, hands down, like by far. But at the same time, like working efficiently can be kind of a practical, like thing that will help you get hired.
Goes back to your big break theory. Great TV show, by the way, The Big Break Theory. You're putting in all this extra work, and people don't really recognize that work as much as the big break that has come your way, whether it be 2B or Jolyne.
Right, because there's so many years of working on those skills that go into it. So I think people have this idea, the other term that I wrote a whole article about this, but the other term that people use is like getting discovered. And I was like, well, what does that really mean? Like, it's very rare that somebody will just get noticed by an agent or noticed by a casting director, and that is what changes their entire career. Because as freelancers, our work has to come from a variety of different sources. So yes, maybe you sign with an agency and, that helps kind of get you more auditions. Maybe you get on the roster of like a dubbing studio and then a lot more auditions come in or so, those are things that can happen that will get you more auditions, and maybe, those auditions can lead to bookings and things like that. But whenever people say, like, I want to get discovered, it's like, well, you act like you can just go in front of some magical wizard person and they'll be like, hey, I'll give you a career, and that's not how it works. Like, even if you do sign with an agency, which I think most people are, like, mean when they say they want to get discovered, it's like, but there's a lot of work that doesn't even go through agents. Like, a lot of agents don't handle anime, for example, because of the budgets. So it's kind of like, if you want to book anime, yeah, maybe you could get with one of the like 2 agencies in LA that will like send some anime auditions, but you kind of have to like work on your skills, your marketing materials, and try to get on rosters of studios that do casting for that sort of thing.
It's a lot of legwork for something that the general public might see as, oh, they just kind of popped up and got that role one day.
This happens to everyone who does this. We always get asked, like, people want there to be some kind of magic solution. Like, I understand not liking the whole answer of, like, you have to take classes, you have to learn to act, you have to put in a lot of work and time, you have to get, like, your home set up, get a demo produced, get practice, do hobby work first, all that kind of stuff. Like, because they just want there to be some shortcut. They're like, well, can't I just have somebody like refer me to an anime studio? It's like, well, even if somebody did that, even if they like had the power to like do, it's like, if you're not good yet, if you can't work efficiently yet, you're not going to get hired. Maybe you can get one audition out of pity, but like they're not going to cast you. So it's kind of like everyone wants like a magic solution, and it can be frustrating to be told like there really isn't one. Zeno Robinson said it best in one of our Q&As on the server. He just said there's no substitute for putting the work in. And I love that so much, because that's what it comes down to. And it's true that, some people maybe get successful or what have you a couple years in, and for other people maybe it takes 10 years. And, there's not like a strict timeline that you can expect, because luck is a factor, unfortunately. And there's other like privileges and biases that come in. That's a whole story for another time, but it's kind of like, it's not like a straightforward career path where you're like, if you just do this and you do this, you'll get bookings, because it's not.
No, it's not like that movie A Star Is Born.
You had reminded me, my roommate once, she was watching the Brie Larson YouTube channel, and there was one video on there which I thought was really eye-opening, and she actually did a whole video about failed auditions, and she actually like laid out every single movie that she had auditioned for, and she had some stories about a few of ones that she didn't get, but it wasn't until that moment that you realize, like, Brie Larson, who was a big movie star, she had gone through this whole list of like how many movies she actually auditioned for and how many of them actually rejected her. And it was somewhere pretty close to like 98% of what she auditioned for, she did not get. And that's the part of acting that not many people realize, is that you are going to be let down. Like, you're not going to get it most of the time.
Yep, that is incredibly common, because I see people be like, well, I've auditioned for 20 things and didn't book any. It's like, yeah, that's because it's so competitive. And the other thing that I tell people, because I think mindset, like I'm a big proponent of like mindset, I write articles about it, and how framing the way you think about things makes a huge difference. So one of the things I tell people is it's not rejection. It's, unless the producer specifically writes to you and they're like, your audition was just so terrible that, I threw it in the trash and wanted to let you know. But, they're not going to do that because it's so unprofessional,
No.
right? So it's kind of like, I think of it as it's not rejection. Like, because I've also done a little bit on the casting side just for, indie projects and things like that. But I've also seen this from the casting side where, say I get 100 auditions for a project, and it's way more. Like, for one game I helped cast, I had 500 auditions. But let's just say, for the sake of numbers, you have 100 actors reading for one role. And all these actors presumably are vetted in some way. It's not people who are just trying it out. These are people who, are professionals to some extent, have put the work and time in, all that kind of stuff. So these are all 100 good actors reading for this part. Some of them whom are, really big in the industry, some are who are newer but really good and up and coming. And then the client wants to hear the top 5. So, part of the casting director's job, let's say in this situation, is you go through, you listen to those 100 auditions, you find the 5 that you feel like best kind of embody the character and what the client is asking for, and you send them to the client so that they can say, okay, of these 5 selects, here's my top pick. It's hard enough to get it to narrow down to the 5, because a lot of times there's like way more, and I may be like listening to those auditions over and over, like, oh, I like what this person did here, but then this, and it's like, there's so many good choices, there's so many valid choices that sometimes, you're just kind of like, okay, I like this person's voice print a little bit better, is what it might come down to. Or, this person maybe just sounds, they had great acting, they just sound a tiny bit too old for the character, or whatever. You just have to start narrowing down based on like really small factors. And, but a lot of times they were all good choices. And then you send the 5 and you're like, these are all such good picks for the character. How is the client going to pick? And then they make their selection, which sometimes is not even like the one that maybe you would have picked, for example. And so, for example, even the other people in the top 5, the other 4 actors were all so good. They all could have been fantastic choices for the role. Client could only pick one. And then same for if you take the other 100 actors. So you have 100 actors trying for a part, which it's often more. 99 actors out of those 100 did not get picked. That doesn't mean they're rejected. That doesn't mean those 99 actors are bad. It just means that they could only pick one, so everyone else by default is like rejected.
Is there any like etiquette that you follow? Because you've been on both sides of casting and being casted. When you're in an audition, is there anything that you will typically do? Like, I've heard actors, they say like, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, don't be afraid to ask if you can do another take or like do a different version of that line. Like, I've heard that before. So like, is there anything that you do specifically?
Well, I think for voice acting, it's a little different than on camera. One of the big things being that like voice acting auditions are almost done entirely independently now. So even if it's a job where you're going to go to the studio and have a live session if you book the part, most of the times for the auditions, especially post-COVID and everything, they're just going to send it to you. Like, they'll send you an email, either, from the studio you work with or your agency or, whoever, and they'll say like, hey, we have an audition for, let's say, like this video game, submit your MP3s to this Dropbox folder. So a lot of times you're not having any sort of real, if you have a question, like if something in the instructions aren't clear, then, you can email back and say like, hey, I just wanted to clarify how I'm supposed to label this, or, whatever. But most of the time it's so like, it's very self-directed. So that's like another skill you kind of have is just, you have to be confident enough in the choices you make. Because I would say, like, one of the other etiquette is, like, after you submit your audition and the deadline passes and stuff, you don't want to, like, follow up. Like, you should never email being like, hey, how'd I do? Did I get the part? Because it's, like, it's seen as, like, very, like, amateur. Like, if you're a professional actor, then you don't do this. You're just supposed to kind of send your audition, forget, move on to the next thing. If you get cast, it's a nice surprise. Or if you get a call back, it's a nice surprise. But it's kind of like they'll contact you if they need something else from you, so you don't want to contact them and annoy them and clog their inbox, you know?
So don't give them gift boxes full of glitter.
Yeah, I'd say only give gifts if it's like you complete a show and you want to like give the director a gift or something because it's like, hey, we just finished this big thing.
Yeah.
We also wanted to ask, how's working with Tiana Camacho?
Super fun. Like, we both were really hoping to be those characters. You know, it was so exciting when we both got cast. In terms of JoJo, I would say a lot of times I would be the last one in to record just because I had so many lines. The other actors would have already been recorded, so I would maybe like hear a little bit of Tiana's lines to bounce off of in the preview, or hear a little of Matt Mercer's lines, or, you know, so on and so forth. And I really like that because by contrast, if you're like the first one to come in to record, it's like nobody else is in yet. So you kind of, you know, you have the Japanese performance to go off of course, but it just really helps if you can kind of like hear a little bit of the other actors in your headphones. Like, you don't get to like watch the scenes or whatever, see what they already recorded, but it just kind of like, if it's a lead up to your line, a lot of times they will kind of like leave it in the track so that you can kind of hear what you're responding to.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to have someone to bounce off of. And you guys known each other for some time too, I understand.
Yeah. So then
Yeah.
we did like a couple events together and things like that.
Fantastic. We love Tiana here.
Yes.
Talking to her after, she's like a Linklater actor or Linklater trained, I assume.
Yeah, she is like classically, you know, she did like theater, all this kind of stuff back in New York. So, you know, that's another thing I tell people too, is kind of like, that wasn't my path specifically. Like, I kind of focused on voice acting and stuff, but, you know, I did take a class on Linklater and stuff when I was in college. And, you know, it's that like so many things, because people think, well, I just want to do anime, so why do I have to learn about acting fundamentals? It's because those acting fundamentals will inform your choices for anime, for video games, for cartoons, for whatever you audition for.
Yeah, I think having a well-rounded set of tools in your toolbox is good for any art form, really. Also, I think it's amazing that you and Tiana, your career paths were so different, yet you ended up in the same show. It's really encouraging. It's really inspiring, I will say.
Yeah, like that's why I tell people, because, you know, I know like people tend to act like there's just one way, and that's like, you know, you have to do like theater and do all that. But like realistically, that's not going to be everybody's path, and it's not going to be what works for everyone. So I tell people it's fine if you know you want to do voice and you want to go into that. But, you know, the core of it, regardless of which kind of like path you take that's going to be your own, is just learning how to act. So if you want to just learn to do voiceover, that's fine, as long as you are learning how to portray a character. It's so much less about being able to do certain voices, being able to sound a certain way, because sound is like only a small factor in casting. I'd say, like, of course it matters, like the voice print has to fit the character, especially if you're matching from another language, but it's the acting that's going to get you hired.
I think we asked this to Tiana when we had her on, but we had asked her, and I want to ask you, is there anything that's been like outside of acting that's informed, I guess, your skills? Like, have you had like this weird make money job that has informed how you act, or your abilities and your skills?
I mean, a lot of my day jobs before were just like such specific things that I don't know like how it would really carry over. Like, I worked in coffee shops, which were pretty cool. I worked in a video game store. My last day job that I had was I worked in a kitten nursery. That was really fun because I got to bottle feed and give meds to newborn kittens and stuff. I guess the sum of all our life experiences can inform us in ways and things like that. One of the things that I've learned in acting classes and stuff is acting, when it comes down to it, is all about feeling emotion, even if you have to manufacture these emotions or what have you. So as humans, we're all capable of accessing all those different emotions, because this is going to be very common. You're playing a character who has gone through something that you've never gone through, Or maybe the character is reacting to something in a way that you personally would not react that same way in that situation, but that's okay because you are human. You know what it's like to feel those emotions. You know what it's like to feel anger, to feel sadness, even if you know, it's a highly specific situation to like this fictional world created in this show or whatever. We all know how to be genuine humans because that's a part of being human. So, you know, I even say like, as much as like it is really hard to deal with mental illness and things like that, I try to like make the best of it in the sense that, you know, my ability to like feel these emotions and be connected to these emotions, I try to use that in a way that will maybe help my performance.
You can't have rain without sunshine.
Yep.
I'm sorry, night without day. You know what I'm saying. You can't have one thing without the other.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, you know, if your life is always like perfect, which no one's is, but you know, if somebody never really had anything wrong, like not experienced like sadness or loss or, you know, anything bad in their life, it's kind of like, well, how can you then portray characters authentically who have those real human emotions, who have conflict? Because to have an interesting plot for a show or game or whatever, of course there has to be conflict. That's like a central element. So I don't do like substitution method. I know some actors like that. But you know, my kind of thing is sort of, okay, this character is in this situation. How are they going to react? Because the way our characters react, you know, the way Jolyne reacts to something is going to be a lot different from how I would react to something probably. But in that moment, I am living Jolyne's reality, and I need to think, okay, I'm Jolyne. How would I react to this as her?
Maybe a little more hot-headed.
It's kind of like if I knew somebody like didn't like me and wanted to beat me up, I'd probably be like, why? Why don't they like me? What did I do wrong? And you know, but when you're in prison and you have enemies stand you, so it's like, gotta beat them up, you know?
Gotta beat the crap out of them. What direction do you see the internet playing in fan casting in studio-owned properties? Like Donald Glover was in Star Wars, not recently, but a while ago. Beyonce was in Lion King. You were in JoJo. It seems like a lot of these kind of fan-driven campaigns to have someone cast is playing a bigger role in studio casting. Do you think that's going to go in a stronger direction? Like maybe people have more power or say in studio projects? Or do you think it's just kind of the result of a happy coincidence?
I think it's something we actually kind of have to be careful with on all sides, because part of it is, you know, when you have like a casting director's job and, you know, and even like the vision from the end client, sometimes they want something totally different. I'll maybe use the example of like, okay, like Detective Pikachu, the entire internet wanted like Danny DeVito, but then, you know, the powers that be were like, okay, but like Ryan Reynolds is more like along the lines of kind of what we're envisioning here. So it's kind of, I think it's fine to like have your ideal cast and say, oh, I would love like this person or whatever, but also like, you know, just be open to the fact that people in those positions might have a different vision and let them do like their job. Because I tried to do this for Jolyne as much as I could when things got closer to being animated, you know, by not like, you know, like really like engaging or retweeting or anything with people saying like, oh, I hope you play this character. Because of course, like that means a lot to me. Like, yeah, it's like, I hope I play this character too. But if, say, for example, they decided another actor would be a better fit, I didn't want people to go and like bully her and be like, oh, I wish it was Kira or whatever, because that's not fair, you know? It's like, it ultimately, like, whoever gets cast for the role should be like whoever's the best person for the role based on, you know, whatever factors you want to throw out there. So, I mean, I'm sure like the fact that I was like passionate about the role helped in the sense that it's like I read the manga, I knew like her story, I knew what happened in part 6, I knew the rest of the franchise. You know, I think being informed probably helped me make better choices in my audition and my work and stuff. But, you know, it's kind of like at the end of the day, I think we all need to be careful, whether like fans, actors, whoever, to, you know, to understand that our preferences and the things we'd like to do are just what we want to do. You know, you never want to be like, for example, if you're an actor, you can't control if people are like, hey, I really want you for this character, but you don't want like people to like send death threats to another actor if they get instead.
Yeah, of course.
You can't like control that, but we do kind of have the responsibility to sort of not like fuel the fire so much that, you know, I know that probably sounds very hypocritical because like everyone knew I wanted to play Jolyne and stuff, but you know, like I did try to kind of step back from that when it got more of a reality that part 6 was getting animated.
Yeah, that's a very nuanced take. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jolyne and loving media, are there any other roles or projects you'd like to pursue in the future that you feel comfortable sharing now?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like, Jolyne was the biggest one of all time, so I feel like it's like I can't ask for anything else, right?
Right.
But, just hypothetically speaking, another franchise I've liked for a really long time is Guilty Gear, and I would love to play the character Dizzy. That's just something that I've wanted to do for like a really long time, and it would be really fun to at least try out for it. Another thing that's like highly unrealistic, and I mean, I know this is like especially not gonna happen now, but I always wished I could have been in Smash Brothers. Because I used to play competitive Smash and stuff, so it's kind of like, oh man, how cool would that be? But, it's just like the closest character would probably be like 2B, and Nier was never released on a Nintendo console, so it's like I kind of always knew that wasn't really gonna be an option.
Well, maybe when they make Smash Brothers 7, 8?
Ultimate for real this time, like,
The real ultimate last finale. Yeah.
But it almost wouldn't feel the same without Sakurai involved, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I do not want to be in that guy's shoes.
I'm so happy he got to realize his vision though, and it was really cool that Sora was the final character, because you can tell like that meant a lot to him too.
Oh, yeah, you could tell that he was ecstatic for getting him in. Good for Sakurai. I'm glad. Round of applause. All right. Well, that just about wraps it up. Let's have some final thoughts on the conversation that we just had. Dan, do you happen to have any final thoughts that you'd like to depart with us today?
Like, Kira, you really opened up my eyes as to like what my mentality towards success feels like. I do like your take on like there's really no such thing as like overnight success or like getting discovered. I like that idea that if you work hard and if you're really passionate about what you do, like success will come in many different forms, and it'll happen when you least expect it.
Yeah, and the other thing that I always like to throw out is, and I've written articles on this too, is the idea of success itself is subjective. Because for some people, success looks different to each person. Some people would say, if I can just be in an anime someday, even as a background character, if I can just be in a video game or be a playable character in a video game, then I'll be happy. Then that'll count as success for me. Other people say like, oh, if I can quit my day job, then that's what'll count as success for me. And one of the things that I have to remind myself too is that the goalposts are always gonna move. Because for me, it's like, my biggest goal for the longest time was I want to be a playable character in a fighting game. If I can be a playable character in a fighting game, I'll feel like I am successful because that's my biggest goal. So, I did that. And of course, it helps and stuff. But then it's like the next goal happens and you're like, oh man, well, I'll just be successful if I can do this, and so on and so forth. So it's like, now, for example, I want to say I feel like I'm successful because I booked my biggest dream role of all time, and that was something so personal to me. But again, that is highly subjective. Other people might look at me and be like, no, I don't think she's successful because she only does anime and JRPGs and she's not in big cartoons or movies or whatever. So it's different for each person. And so you're never really going to feel like you've made it, but you can kind of just say what are realistic goals that I can give to myself in the meantime, and understand that those goals are going to change.
Yeah. My final thoughts are, I also appreciate that perspective of there's no such thing as a big break. I kind of envision it like an iceberg. Everyone just kind of sees the top, but there's a whole 90% underneath that people don't see, which is hard work, life experience, things like that. And I think that's a great reminder of artists everywhere to know that not everything is just flips a switch and everything's going to be okay. You got to work for it.
Yeah, I don't know anyone, even, some of my friends who maybe had an easier or quicker time of it in terms of getting into the industry and stuff. I don't know anybody who feels like their path was easy or that they got successful instantly or that they don't struggle, because some people, it's the opposite way too, where maybe they book a lot of big stuff really early on out of the gate. So they feel like, wow, I got lucky, I'm getting successful. And then they hit a dry spell and they're like, what am I going to do? I counted on all this income and now I'm not booking, or, the people who relied on convention sales to make money, and then the pandemic hit and suddenly that source of income was gone. And, it's just there's so many variables as a self-employed person that it's kind of you just have to be prepared for those things. And, I don't know anyone who thinks like, yeah, I had it easy. I just, except for like people have been doing this for like 30 years and, the industry was very different back in the day and it was a lot smaller, but it's so competitive now that I feel like everyone's had to work hard who's in it right now.
It's like when the older generation's like, why don't these young kids buy a house and like get a car? And yeah. I won't go into that too much, but
I could go on all day.
Do you have any final thoughts on the conversation that we just had, Kira?
No, I pretty much said all those things. I'm going to put the link to the Voice Acting Club website down in the chat because that has a link to the Discord server as well as the forums, and on the forums is where I write all the articles. So if anyone's more interested in reading more about like kind of like my mindset theories and advice and stuff, I have a lot of articles on there that go into kind of like the mental health side of the business as well as just some more practical business advice like accounting and stuff.
Fantastic. That will be in the description down below. And that is the Almost Adults episode. How should we end this, Kira?
Ora, ora, ora!